The moment I opened the encrypted file on my laptop that quiet Tuesday evening, I knew my safe, numbers-driven life was about to explode into something far more dangerous than any audit I had ever conducted. I was 28, a senior forensic accountant at one of the most respected firms in the city, and I looked every bit the professional. Long, glossy dark hair fell in soft waves down my back, catching the cool blue glow of my multiple monitors. My emerald green eyes, framed by thick lashes, were sharp from years of spotting tiny discrepancies that others missed, and my body moved with quiet confidence in my simple black silk blouse and tailored pencil skirt. I wasn't here for appearances tonight. I was here because a routine audit for a mid-sized tech company had revealed numbers that refused to add up. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the occasional click of my keyboard. I leaned closer to the screen, the financial statements looking clean at first glance, until I dug deeper. Offshore accounts, layered shell companies, and transactions that looped through 7 different countries in under 48 hours. The kind of sophisticated movement that screamed one thing: money laundering on an industrial scale. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I should have closed the file and reported it through proper channels in the morning. Instead, I kept digging. A soft notification pinged. An encrypted message had just appeared in my secure work inbox from an unknown sender. Stop looking at Vanguard Nexus. They already know you're looking. Get out now. I stared at the message, heart rate climbing. Before I could reply, the screen flickered. My apartment lights dimmed for a split second, then returned to normal. A power fluctuation? Or something worse? I stood up slowly, emerald eyes scanning the quiet apartment. That's when I heard it. A faint click from the hallway outside my door. The sound of the building's security system being bypassed. Someone was coming. I grabbed my laptop, the external hard drive with all my findings, and my coat. My bare feet were silent on the hardwood as I moved toward the fire escape. Just as I reached the window, 3 sharp knocks sounded on my front door, polite, almost professional. A low male voice called through the door, calm and measured. "Ms. Voss, this is building security. We had a report of a possible gas leak on your floor. Mind if we check?" I didn't answer. I knew every security guard in this building by voice. This wasn't one of them. The knocks came again. Harder this time. I slipped out onto the fire escape just as the door lock clicked open behind me. The night air hit me, cool and sharp. I climbed down quickly, heart hammering. The laptop bag slung across my body. Halfway down, I glanced up. A tall figure in a dark coat leaned over the railing above. Stormy blue eyes locking onto mine through the shadows. He wasn't one of the men who had entered my apartment. He was something else. "Elena Voss," he called down, voice cutting clearly through the quiet night. "If you want to live past tonight, stop running and listen to me." I paused on the metal landing, emerald eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" I demanded. "Jack Harlan," he replied. "And right now, I'm the only person in this city who doesn't want you dead." The city lights glittered around us like silent witnesses. I had come home tonight expecting to finish a simple audit. Instead, I had uncovered a conspiracy that could collapse entire economies, and a man who claimed to be my only chance at survival. The storm had found me, and it was only just beginning. I didn't run. Instead, I stood frozen on the metal landing of the fire escape, emerald green eyes locked on the man above me. Jack Harlan. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell across his forehead in the dim glow of the city lights. His stormy blue eyes held mine without blinking, calm in a way that made my pulse spike even higher. Below me, the alley was quiet. Above me, I could hear the faint sounds of my apartment door being opened and closed, followed by low voices. The men who had entered were searching. "Decision time, Elena," Jack said quietly, his voice carrying down to me. "You have about 90 seconds before they realize you're not inside. Come with me or take your chances alone. But if you choose alone, you won't make it to morning." I weighed my options in the space of a heartbeat. Every instinct told me Jack was dangerous, but the message on my laptop and the way those men had bypassed my building's security told me the alternative was worse. "Fine," I said. "But if this is a trap, I'll make sure you regret it." A faint, almost approving, half smile touched his lips. "Fair enough." He descended the fire escape with surprising speed and silence, landing beside me on the landing. Up close, he was even more imposing. Powerful build, faint scars visible on his knuckles and along one forearm where his sleeve had ridden up. The faint scent of clean cotton and something metallic clung to him. "Follow me. Stay close. No talking until we're clear." We moved down the remaining flights and dropped into the alley. Jack led me through a narrow gap between buildings, then across a service road into the shadows of a parking garage. He moved like someone who had done this many times before, never hesitating, always choosing the darkest path. We reached a black SUV parked on the lower level. Jack opened the passenger door for me, then slid behind the wheel. The engine started with a low purr. As we pulled out onto the street, I finally spoke. "Who were those men in my apartment?" "Cleaners," Jack replied, eyes on the rearview mirror. "They work for Vanguard Nexus, or rather, for the network that controls Vanguard Nexus. You found the first thread of their financial web tonight. Most people who get that far don't live long enough to tell anyone." I tightened my grip on the laptop bag in my lap. "And you? How do you know all this?" He glanced at me briefly, stormy blue eyes unreadable. "Because I've been tracking them for 3 years. They destroyed my career and nearly killed me when I got too close. Now I work from the outside, gathering evidence, disrupting their operations where I can. When your name appeared in their internal monitoring logs yesterday, I knew they would move on you tonight." We drove in silence for several minutes, weaving through quiet side streets. Jack checked the mirrors constantly. "Where are we going?" I asked. "A safe room I prepared 6 months ago. Off-grid. No cameras, no records. We can talk there." The safe room turned out to be a nondescript storage unit in an anonymous industrial park on the edge of the city. From the outside, it looked like every other unit. Faded gray door, simple padlock. Inside, Jack had transformed it. Reinforced walls, soundproofing panels, a sturdy metal table with 2 chairs, a small cot against one wall, shelves stocked with non-perishable food, bottled water, medical supplies, spare clothes, and several locked cases that I assumed contained weapons. A powerful laptop sat on the table, already connected to a portable generator humming softly in the corner. Multiple monitors showed feeds from hidden cameras around the perimeter. Jack locked the door behind us and activated a secondary deadbolt. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the chairs. "We don't have much time before they widen the search." I sat, placing my laptop and hard drive on the table. Jack pulled up the second chair across from me. "Show me what you found," he said. I opened my laptop and walked him through the anomalies step by step. The layered shell companies. The rapid cross-border transfers. The way money disappeared and reappeared in Vanguard Nexus, accounts with perfect timing to influence currency markets and government bids. Jack listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with every detail. When I finished, he leaned back. "You're good," he said simply. "Better than most. You caught patterns that took me months to see. The network is called the Nexus. It's not just one company. It's a web of financial institutions, hedge funds, and political influencers who manipulate global markets for profit. They don't steal money in the traditional sense. They create artificial crises, then profit from the recovery. Wars, elections, currency collapses, they've had a hand in all of it." I stared at him. "And the codex, the evidence I found, proves it?" "Not all of it, but enough to start pulling threads. Enough that they will kill to keep it quiet." He stood and began preparing a simple meal: canned soup heated on a portable stove, protein bars, bottled water. While it heated, he checked the monitors again. "You have 2 choices tonight," he said as he set a bowl in front of me. "Option 1, I give you a new identity and enough cash to disappear. You forget everything you saw and live quietly somewhere far away. Option 2, you stay. We work together. You keep digging into the financials. I handle security and logistics. We build a case strong enough to expose them publicly." I ate mechanically, mind racing through the implications. "If I disappear," I said, "they'll still come after me eventually. People like this don't leave loose ends." "True," Jack admitted. I looked across the table at him, this stranger who had appeared out of nowhere and offered me a lifeline. "Then I stay," I said, "but on my terms. I lead the analysis. You don't withhold information. And the moment I think you're using me as bait, I walk." Jack studied me for a long moment, stormy blue eyes assessing. "Agreed." We worked through the night. I dove deeper into the data on my laptop while Jack monitored the perimeter and prepared backup drives. I mapped out the shell company structure, identified key players, and began building a timeline of major market manipulations linked to Nexus. Jack contributed what he knew: names of mid-level operatives, patterns of communication, locations of secure servers. He never volunteered more than I asked, but he answered every question with precise, clinical detail. At one point, deep into the early morning hours, I looked up from the screen. "You said they nearly killed you," I said. "What happened?" Jack was silent for a moment, then spoke without looking away from the monitors. "I was an intelligence analyst. I found the first thread of Nexus while investigating a currency crash in Southeast Asia. They framed me for leaking classified information. I lost my clearance, my career, and almost my life in a staged car accident. I've been off-grid ever since, gathering proof." His voice was flat, controlled. No self-pity, just facts. I nodded slowly. "Then we both have reasons to finish this." We continued working until the first gray light of dawn filtered through the small ventilation slits near the ceiling. Jack finally stood. "You need sleep. 4 hours? I'll take first watch. Then we plan our next move. How to get the evidence out without getting killed in the process." I lay down on the cot, exhausted but wired. The ledger of numbers I had uncovered spun behind my closed eyelids. I had come home last night expecting to finish a simple audit. Instead, I had stepped into a war over the hidden architecture of global power. And the man sitting across the room, watching the monitors with stormy blue eyes, was now my only ally in it. The numbers had lied. but the truth they concealed was far more terrifying. 4 hours of sleep felt like 10 minutes. When Jack woke me, the safe room was still dim, lit only by the glow of the monitors and a single task lamp over the metal table. My body ached from the tension of the previous night, and the graze on my shoulder throbbed under the fresh bandage Jack had applied while I slept. I sat up slowly, pushing my long dark hair back from my face, emerald green eyes adjusting to the artificial light. Jack looked as alert as ever, though the dark circles under his stormy blue eyes suggested he hadn't slept at all. He handed me a mug of strong black coffee and a protein bar without comment. "Perimeter is still clear," he said, "but they've widened the search. Your apartment has been swept. Your firm has already been contacted with a story about a family emergency. They're painting you as unstable to cover their tracks." I took the coffee, letting the heat steady me. "Then we move fast. I need to map the full structure before they shut down the remaining accounts I can still access." We returned to the table. I opened my laptop and connected the external hard drive. Jack positioned himself so he could watch both the monitors and my screen at the same time. I dove back into the data. Layer by layer, the web revealed itself. Vanguard Nexus wasn't the head of the snake. It was merely one visible head. Beneath it lay a network of private equity funds, offshore banks, and shell companies that funneled money through dozens of jurisdictions. The pattern was elegant in its brutality. Create artificial volatility in emerging markets, short the currencies, then buy up distressed assets at rock-bottom prices once the panic hit. "These aren't random trades," I said, highlighting a chain of transactions. "They're coordinated. Look at the timing. Every major currency crash in the last 8 years lines up perfectly with Nexus buying pressure. They're not just profiting from chaos, they're manufacturing it." Jack leaned in, studying the timeline I had built. "That matches what I found in the leaked intelligence reports. But you're seeing the financial mechanics better than I ever could. Who's at the center? Who pulls the strings?" I cross-referenced names and ownership structures for another hour. The deeper I went, the colder the trail became. "There's a core group," I finally said. 7 individuals. Their identities are buried behind layers of trusts and nominees. But the money flows all converge on one name that appears in every major pivot point: Victor Langford. He's listed as a silent partner in half a dozen legitimate investment firms, but his real influence is invisible. If I'm right, he's the architect. Jack's expression hardened. "Langford, I've heard the name. Former Treasury official turned private consultant. He's the one who nearly had me killed 3 years ago." A heavy silence settled between us. I continued working, building a visual map of the network on the laptop screen. The structure was beautiful in its complexity, like a spider's web with Langford at the center. Every strand connected back to him. "We need proof that can't be dismissed," I said. "Transaction logs, internal memos, communication records. The financial data alone won't be enough. People will call it coincidence or conspiracy theory." Jack nodded. "Then we go after the physical evidence. There's a secure data center on the outskirts of the city where Nexus stores their offline backups. Heavily guarded, but not impossible to breach if we plan it right." I looked up from the screen. "You're talking about breaking into a fortified facility. That's not an audit, that's espionage." "Welcome to the real world, Elena," he replied, voice flat. "You crossed that line the moment you opened that file." We spent the next several hours planning. Jack sketched the layout of the data center from memory and from the limited intelligence he had gathered over the years. I analyzed the financial flows to identify the most valuable servers, the ones likely to contain the unredacted records. By late afternoon, we had the beginnings of a plan. A small window during the nightly system maintenance when security protocols were briefly relaxed. Jack would handle physical entry and distraction. I would extract the data. You realize the odds are terrible, I said as we reviewed the timeline one final time. I know, Jack replied, but if we do nothing, they win. And I'm tired of letting them win. He stood and checked the monitors again. We rest for 2 more hours, then move. Eat something. You'll need your strength. I forced myself to eat a simple meal while my mind continued working through variables. The safe room felt smaller now, the walls closer. Every minute we stayed here increased the risk that the Veil, or whatever they called themselves internally, would find us. When the time came to prepare, Jack handed me a small black backpack with essentials. A compact laptop, external drives, encryption tools, and a change of dark clothing. He equipped himself with tools I didn't ask about and a weapon he kept discreet. Before we left the safe room, he stopped at the door and turned to me. "Last chance to walk away," he said quietly. "I can still get you out of the city tonight. New identity. Clean start." I met his stormy blue eyes without flinching, my emerald gaze steady. "I don't run from the numbers when they're lying this loudly," I replied. "We finish what we started." Jack gave a single, sharp nod of respect. We stepped out into the night. The industrial park was quiet, the city lights glowing in the distance like a false promise of safety. Jack led us through back roads and service roads, always staying in shadow. Twice we had to duck into alleys as security vehicles passed. The data center rose ahead of us, a low, windowless building surrounded by high fences, cameras, and armed guards. It looked ordinary from the outside, but I knew from the financial trails that it held the backbone of an empire built on lies. Jack disabled the outer perimeter camera with a small device from his pack. We slipped through a maintenance gate he had apparently prepared earlier. Inside the fence, we moved like ghosts toward a side service entrance. Jack bypassed the electronic lock while I kept watch. The door clicked open. We were inside. The corridor was sterile and dimly lit. Jack moved ahead, checking corners. I followed close behind, the weight of the backpack a constant reminder of what we carried and what we were about to steal. We reached the server room door. Jack disabled the final lock. The moment we stepped inside, alarms began to blare. Red lights flashed. A mechanical voice announced a security breach. Jack's expression didn't change. "They were waiting for us. Move fast." We had seconds, maybe minutes, before armed response arrived. I went straight to the main server rack while Jack covered the door. My fingers flew across the keyboard, bypassing security protocols with the tools I had prepared. The data streamed onto my external drives, terabytes of unredacted records, communication logs, and transaction histories that proved the Nexus network's crimes. Jack fired 2 precise shots as the first security team burst through the door. The men dropped. "Time?" he asked. "Almost there," I replied, heart pounding. More footsteps thundered down the corridor. I yanked the drives free the moment the transfer completed. "Got it." Jack grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the emergency exit at the back of the server room. We burst out into the night just as more guards rounded the corner. We ran. Bullets whistled past us. Jack returned fire while pushing me ahead. We sprinted across the open ground toward the fence line, the backpack with the stolen data bouncing against my spine. We cleared the fence and disappeared into the darkness of the surrounding industrial lots. Behind us, sirens wailed and searchlights swept the area. We had the evidence. But the Nexus now knew exactly who we were and how much we had taken. The real hunt had just begun. We ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like lead. The industrial lots blurred into a maze of chain-link fences, rusted machinery, and abandoned warehouses. Jack moved like a shadow, never slowing, never hesitating, guiding us through gaps and alleys I would never have noticed on my own. Behind us, the sirens and searchlights of the data center security teams swept the night, growing fainter but never disappearing completely. My backpack felt heavier with every step. Inside it were the external drives containing terabytes of stolen data, the unredacted records that could expose the Nexus network and bring down an empire built on manipulated markets and hidden power. The graze on my shoulder throbbed in time with my heartbeat, but I pushed the pain down. Stopping was not an option. Jack finally pulled me into the shadowed loading dock of an old textile factory. We pressed ourselves against the cold brick wall, breathing hard. He checked the small device in his hand, a signal jammer and tracker detector. "Clear for the moment," he said quietly. "They lost our trail when we cut through the rail yard, but they'll regroup fast. We need to move again soon." I leaned my head back against the brick, emerald green eyes closed for a brief second. "We have the data. That's what matters. Now we need to get it somewhere safe where it can't be erased." Jack nodded. "There's a secondary safe location, an old printing press building on the east side. It's off the grid with better equipment for analysis. We can review what you pulled and decide the next step." We moved again, sticking to back streets and service roads. The city felt different now. Every passing car, every distant siren, every shadow carried threat. Jack stayed half a step ahead, his stormy blue eyes constantly scanning. He had removed his dark coat during the run, revealing the black tactical shirt beneath and the weapon holstered at his side. The faint scars on his forearms caught the occasional streetlight. By the time we reached the old printing press building, the first hints of dawn were touching the horizon. The structure was a hulking brick relic from the early 20th century. Windows boarded up, doors chained. Jack unlocked a side entrance with a key that looked custom-made. Inside, the ground floor was still filled with dusty printing machines and stacks of old paper. Jack led me up a narrow staircase to a hidden second-floor loft he had clearly prepared months earlier. The space was functional: reinforced walls, a reinforced door, multiple monitors connected to a secure server, a small kitchenette, and 2 cots. A large work table dominated the center. Jack locked the door behind us and activated a heavy deadbolt. "Safe for now," he said. "Power is from solar and generator, no external connections that can be traced." I set the backpack on the table and carefully removed the external drives. My hands were steady despite everything. I connected them to the main laptop and began the verification process. Jack watched silently for a moment, then moved to check the perimeter cameras he had installed around the building. While the data integrity check ran, I allowed myself a moment to breathe. My long dark hair was tangled and damp with sweat. The black silk blouse I had worn the previous evening was torn at the shoulder from the graze and stained with dust. I looked nothing like the polished forensic accountant who had started this audit. The laptop chimed. The data was intact. I opened the files and began sorting through them. What I found was worse than I had imagined. The Nexus network wasn't just manipulating markets. It was orchestrating them. Internal memos detailed deliberate campaigns to destabilize entire economies so that Nexus-affiliated funds could buy assets at fire sale prices. Political donations, media influence operations, and even coordinated leaks to create panic were all documented in cold, clinical language. Victor Langford's name appeared as the ultimate decision-maker in dozens of the most sensitive files. I looked up at Jack, who had returned to the table. "This goes beyond financial crime," I said quietly. "This is economic warfare. They've influenced elections, currency collapses, even regional conflicts to create buying opportunities. The proof is here. Dates, amounts, communication logs. Enough to bring down governments if it gets out." Jack's expression remained hard. "That's why they kill so efficiently. The Nexus doesn't just protect money. It protects the architecture of global power. Langford sits at the center. If we expose him, the whole web unravels." We worked through the morning without pause. I organized the data into clear timelines and evidence chains. Jack cross-referenced names and locations with the intelligence fragments he had gathered over the years. The picture that emerged was staggering. A shadow economy that operated above national laws. At one point, Jack stepped away to prepare a simple meal, canned food heated on a portable stove. He set a plate in front of me without comment. "You need to eat," he said. "Analysis is useless if you collapse." I ate mechanically, mind still turning over the data. "We can't release everything at once," I said between bites. "If we dump it all, they'll discredit it as a hoax or launch immediate counterattacks. We need to release it in controlled stages, starting with the least controversial pieces to build credibility." Jack nodded. "Smart. I have contacts in investigative journalism and a few trusted academics. We can use the dead man switch as backup, but a phased release gives us more control." We spent the rest of the day building the release strategy. I prepared the first package, a set of transaction records showing clear market manipulation in one emerging economy. Jack reviewed it for any identifying traces that could lead back to us. As evening approached, the weight of what we were doing settled over the room. Jack checked the monitors one final time. "Perimeter is still clear, but my sources say the Nexus has increased pressure on law enforcement. They're painting you as a rogue accountant who stole sensitive client data. There's a warrant out for your arrest." I leaned back in the chair, rubbing my tired eyes. "Then we're both fugitives now?" "Yes," Jack said simply. "But we have something they don't. The truth." He paused, then added, "You're handling this better than most would. Most people would have broken by now." I met his stormy blue eyes across the table. "I don't break when the numbers are wrong. I fix them." A faint, almost respectful nod was his only reply. We prepared for the first release. I encrypted the package and set it to send through a series of anonymous servers at a precise time. Jack double-checked the dead man switch on the satellite phone. As the clock ticked toward the release window, the loft felt smaller, the air thicker. Outside, the city continued its normal rhythm, unaware that two people in an old printing press building were about to light a fuse under the hidden architecture of global power. The first file went out at exactly 11:47 p.m. Within minutes, my laptop began receiving alerts. The package had been received by the chosen journalists and academics. The countdown to exposure had begun, but so had the countdown to the Nexus's full retaliation. Jack stood by the window, looking out into the night. "They'll come harder now," he said quietly. "We need to stay ahead of them." I closed the laptop and met his gaze. "Then we stay ahead," I replied. "Together." The numbers had lied for too long. Now the truth was awake, and it was coming for all of them. The first package went live at 11:47 p.m. I watched the confirmation appear on the laptop screen, a small green check mark that felt far too ordinary for what it represented. The encrypted file containing carefully selected transaction records from the Nexus network had been delivered to 3 trusted investigative journalists and 2 senior academics who specialized in financial crime. No names, no direct accusations yet, just raw, irrefutable data showing deliberate market manipulation in one emerging economy. Jack stood beside the table, arms crossed, his stormy blue eyes fixed on the monitors that showed the quiet streets around the old printing press building. "It's done," I said, voice low. "The first thread is out. If they verify it, the story will start spreading by morning." Jack nodded once. "Good. But the Nexus won't wait for morning. They'll move tonight." We didn't celebrate. There was no time. Instead, we immediately began preparing the second package, more sensitive records that linked several Nexus shell companies to political donations and influence operations. I worked methodically, my emerald green eyes scanning line after line of data, cross-referencing dates and amounts with public records I had pulled earlier. My long dark hair was tied back tightly to keep it out of the way, and the graze on my shoulder continued to throb under the bandage, but I pushed the discomfort aside. Jack moved around the loft with quiet efficiency. He checked the perimeter cameras every 15 minutes, reinforced the door with an additional metal bar, and prepared 2 fresh go bags in case we needed to abandon this location quickly. He also cleaned and rebandaged the wound on his arm without a word of complaint. At 2:13 a.m., the first alert came. One of the journalists had already replied through a secure channel. "This is explosive. Verifying now? Need more context? Can we talk off record?" I typed a short, careful response. "Context will come in the next package. Stay safe. Do not trace this." Jack read the message over my shoulder. "They're hooked, but the Nexus will be monitoring those journalists. We just painted targets on their back." The realization settled heavily between us. Every move we made pulled more people into the danger. We continued working through the early morning hours. I built the second package with even greater care, redacting anything that could directly identify us while leaving enough breadcrumbs to make the pattern undeniable. Jack contributed fragments of intelligence he had gathered over the years. Names of mid-level operatives, known safe houses, and patterns of communication that matched the financial trails. By dawn, the second package was ready to send. Before we released it, Jack insisted we eat and rest in shifts. He took first watch again, sitting at the monitors while I lay down on one of the cots. Sleep came in fragments, images of cascading numbers, shadowy boardrooms, and Victor Langford's name flashing behind my closed eyelids. When Jack woke me 4 hours later, the city outside was fully awake. Sunlight filtered through the boarded windows in thin shafts. "Any movement?" I asked, sitting up and pushing my dark hair back from my face. "Quiet so far," he replied. "But my sources say Nexus has activated emergency protocols. They're pressuring law enforcement agencies to treat you as a high-risk fugitive who stole sensitive client data. There's now an official warrant for your arrest on charges of corporate espionage." I stood and walked to the table, emerald eyes scanning the latest data on the screen. Then we accelerate. The second package goes out in 30 minutes. After that, we prepare the third, the one that names Langford directly. We timed the release perfectly. The second package focusing on political influence and campaign financing, dropped at exactly 10 a.m. Within minutes, the secure channel lit up again. The same journalist replied, "This is bigger than I thought. My editor is assigning a team. We need to meet. Safe location?" I glanced at Jack. He shook his head once. "Not yet," I typed back. "Next package in 48 hours. Stay dark." The response came quickly. "Understood. Be careful. They're already watching us." The weight of those words pressed down on the room. We spent the rest of the day analyzing the full scope of the stolen data. The Nexus network was even more extensive than I had initially realized. It wasn't just about money, it was about control. They had influenced central bank policies, shaped regulatory frameworks, and even orchestrated controlled economic crises to reposition global power in their favor. At one point, I looked up from the screen and met Jack's eyes across the table. If we release everything at once, it could cause panic. Market crashes, loss of confidence in institutions. People could get hurt. Jack's expression remained hard. If we do nothing, they continue. More crises, more suffering. The only difference is that this time the suffering is deliberate and profitable for them. I knew he was right, but the responsibility felt crushing. We prepared the third package, the one that directly implicated Victor Langford. It included internal memos with his digital signature, financial trails linking him to the most damaging operations, and communication records showing his direct orders. As evening approached, Jack checked the monitors again and frowned. "Movement," he said. "Two unmarked vans just parked 2 blocks away. They're not police. Nexus operatives." My pulse quickened. "How long do we have?" 30 minutes at most before they start sweeping the area." We moved fast. I finalized the third package and set it to auto-release in 6 hours if we didn't check in. Jack packed the most critical drives into a small, hardened case that could be carried easily. We changed into fresh dark clothing from the supplies he had stored here. Before we left the printing press building, Jack stopped at the top of the stairs. "From this point forward, there's no safe place," he said quietly. "We stay mobile. We release the final packages only when we're ready to disappear completely. And if one of us is compromised, the other keeps going." I met his stormy blue eyes. "Understood." We slipped out through a rear exit into the gathering dusk. The city lights were beginning to flicker on. Jack led us through back alleys and service corridors, always choosing the path with the least visibility. Twice we had to duck into shadows as unmarked vehicles cruised past. Once, a team of 4 men in dark clothing swept the street just 1 block away. We waited in silence until they moved on. We reached a new temporary location, an old storage loft above a closed auto repair shop, just as night fully settled. Jack had prepared this one as well. Basic supplies, a secondary laptop, and reinforced entry points. As we secured the door, I connected the laptop and checked the secure channel. The journalist had sent one final message. "Your packages are being verified by multiple newsrooms. This is going to break big. But they're coming for us too. Stay alive." I closed the laptop and looked at Jack. "The third package drops in 4 hours," I said. "After that, the world will know Victor Langford's name." Jack leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "Then we make sure we're still breathing when it does." Outside, the city continued its normal rhythm. People going home from work, lights turning on in apartments, traffic flowing through the streets. Inside the loft, 2 fugitives prepared for the next phase of a war that had begun with a single audit file. The numbers had lied for decades. Now the truth was waking up, and it was coming for everyone who had helped bury it. The third package dropped at exactly 2 a.m. I watched the confirmation flash across the laptop screen, green check marks appearing one by one as the encrypted files reached the chosen recipients. This time, the material was explosive. Internal memos bearing Victor Langford's digital signature, financial trails linking him directly to orchestrated market crashes, and communication logs showing coordinated influence operations across multiple governments. No speculation, just cold, documented proof. Jack stood beside the table in the dim loft, his stormy blue eyes fixed on the monitors that showed the quiet streets outside the old auto repair shop. His bandaged arm was still stiff, but he moved with the same controlled precision I had come to expect. "It's out," I said quietly, leaning back in the chair. My long dark hair was tied back, but stray strands had escaped, framing my face. My emerald green eyes felt gritty from hours of staring at screens. "Within hours, major news outlets will start verifying. By tomorrow morning, Langford's name will be everywhere." Jack nodded once, but his expression remained grim. "They'll accelerate. The Nexus doesn't negotiate when the core is threatened. They eliminate." We didn't have time to wait for reactions. We immediately began preparing the final package, the one that would connect every thread, the full network map, the names of the 7 core individuals, and the complete historical timeline of how the Nexus had shaped global events for profit. I worked with clinical focus, my fingers moving across the keyboard, while Jack monitored the perimeter and prepared our next move. At 3:47 a.m., the first alert came. One of the journalists replied through the secure channel, "This is nuclear. We're running emergency verification. My editor is pulling the entire team. We need to coordinate protection. Can we arrange a safe drop?" I typed back carefully, "Not yet. Final package in 12 hours. Stay dark and move locations." The reply was immediate. "Understood. They're already watching our offices. Be careful." The weight of those words settled over the loft like a physical presence. Every person we had contacted was now in danger. Jack checked the monitors again. 2 unmarked vans just parked 3 blocks away. They're sweeping the area systematically. We have maybe 20 minutes before they reach this block. We moved without panic. I finalized the final package and set the dead man switch to auto-release in 6 hours if we didn't check in. Jack packed the most critical drives into the hardened case and prepared 2 go bags with fresh supplies. Before we left, Jack stopped at the door. "From here on, we stay mobile," he said. "No fixed location longer than a few hours. We release the final package only when we're ready to disappear completely." I met his stormy blue eyes. "Agreed." We slipped out through a rear service door into the pre-dawn darkness. The city was still quiet, but the tension in the air felt electric. Jack led us through back alleys and service corridors, always choosing the darkest routes. Twice we had to freeze in shadows as unmarked vehicles cruised past slowly, their occupants scanning the streets. We reached a new temporary location, an abandoned rooftop mechanical room atop an old office building, just as the sky began to lighten. Jack had prepared this one weeks earlier. Basic supplies, a portable generator, and reinforced access points. As we secured the door, I connected the laptop and checked the secure channel again. Multiple messages had arrived. The journalist, "Verification complete on package 3. This is going public within hours. We're moving to a secure location. Stay alive." Another contact, an academic. "The data is authentic. I'm sharing with trusted colleagues. The implications are staggering." I closed the laptop and looked at Jack. "The story is breaking. I said. By noon today, Victor Langford will be the most hunted man in the financial world. Jack leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Then the Nexus will come at us with everything they have left. No more subtlety. They'll use law enforcement, private contractors, anyone they can pressure. We spent the next several hours preparing the final release strategy. I built the master file, the complete network map with every name, every transaction, every documented manipulation. Jack reviewed it for any trace that could lead back to us. As morning turned to midday, the secure channel exploded with activity. News alerts began appearing on the laptop. Major outlets running breaking stories. Explosive documents reveal coordinated market manipulation by Shadow Financial Network. Victor Langford, prominent investor, linked to global financial scandals. The first wave had hit, but with it came the backlash. Jack's sources reported that Nexus had activated every contact in law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Warrants were being issued not just for me, but for anyone connected to the leaks. Private security teams were being deployed across the city. At 1:37 p.m., the monitors showed movement below our building, 3 unmarked vans pulling up at the corner. "They're here," Jack said. "Time to move." We grabbed the go bags and the hardened case containing the master drive. Jack led us down a narrow maintenance stairwell to a side exit that opened into a narrow alley. The moment we stepped outside, we heard footsteps and radio chatter closing in from both ends of the alley. Jack raised his weapon. "Run!" We sprinted down the alley, Jack covering our rear with precise shots that forced the pursuers to take cover. Bullets sparked off the brick walls around us. One grazed my arm, sending a fresh burst of pain through my body, but I kept running. We burst out onto a busy street, weaving through pedestrians and traffic. Horns blared, people shouted. The Nexus team emerged behind us, no longer hiding their pursuit. Jack pulled me into a crowded subway entrance. We descended the stairs, pushing through the midday crowd. The pursuers followed, but the density of people slowed them down. We jumped onto a departing train just as the doors closed. The Nexus team was left on the platform, watching helplessly as the train pulled away. For the first time in hours, we had a momentary breathing space. I leaned against the pole, breathing hard, the backpack with the master drive secure against my chest. Jack stood beside me, his stormy blue eyes scanning every face in the car. "We can't stay on public transport long," he said quietly. "They'll have the system monitored within minutes." I nodded. "Then we get off at the next major station and disappear into the crowds. After that, we release the final package and go completely dark." The train rattled through the tunnels. Around us, ordinary people went about their day, reading, listening to music, checking phones, completely unaware that 2 fugitives carrying the biggest financial scandal in decades were standing among them. At the next major station, we slipped off the train and melted into the surging crowd. Jack led us through the underground concourse, changing directions multiple times to shake any possible tail. We emerged onto the street and immediately ducked into a busy shopping district, using the crowds as cover. As we moved, I checked the secure channel one final time. The journalist had sent a single message. "Final package received. Going live in 30 minutes. The world is about to change. Stay safe." I closed the channel and looked at Jack. "It's done," I said. "The final package is about to drop. Victor Langford and the entire Nexus network will be exposed within the hour." Jack gave a single sharp nod. "Then we disappear," he said. "Completely. New identities, new cities. We watch from the shadows as the truth does its work." We continued moving through the city. two ghosts carrying the most dangerous knowledge in the world. Behind us, the first headlines were already breaking. Massive financial conspiracy exposed. Victor Langford at center of global scandal. The numbers had finally stopped lying. The truth was free. And for the first time since that quiet Tuesday evening when I had opened the wrong file, I felt something close to hope. The fight wasn't over, but we had just fired the shot that would echo for decades. The final package dropped at 3:15 p.m. I watched the confirmation appear on the laptop screen in the dim light of the crowded subway car, a single green checkmark that carried the weight of an avalanche. The master file contained everything: the complete network map, Victor Langford's direct involvement in every major operation, the full historical timeline of manufactured crises, and the names of the 7 core individuals who had controlled the Nexus for decades. No speculation, no exaggeration, just irrefutable, documented truth. Jack sat beside me on the subway bench, his stormy blue eyes scanning every face in the car while his body remained perfectly still. The graze on his arm had been re-bandaged, but fresh blood was already seeping through. My own shoulder burned where the bullet had grazed it earlier, but neither of us acknowledged the pain. We had more important things to worry about. Within minutes, the secure channel lit up. The journalist, this is the biggest story of my career. We're going live across multiple platforms in the next hour. The entire team is moving to a secure bunker. Stay dark. They're coming for everyone connected. The academic contact. Verification complete. Sharing with trusted international colleagues. The implications are catastrophic for global markets. Be safe? I closed the channel without replying. There was nothing left to say. The train rattled through the tunnels. Around us, ordinary passengers scrolled on their phones, listened to music, or stared into space, completely unaware that the financial foundations of their world were about to crack open. At the next major station, we slipped off the train and melted into the surging crowd. Jack led us through the underground concourse with practiced efficiency, changing directions multiple times to shake any possible tail. We emerged onto the street and immediately ducked into a busy shopping district, using the afternoon crowds as cover. The first headlines began breaking on the giant digital billboards above us. Explosive leak exposes. Global financial conspiracy. Victor Langford named as mastermind. Nexus Network, years of market manipulation and political influence revealed. Markets plunge as documents show deliberate economic sabotage. People stopped on the sidewalks, staring up at the screens. Phones started ringing. Conversations grew louder. The city was waking up to the truth. But with the truth came chaos. Jack pulled me into a narrow side street as 2 unmarked vans sped past the main avenue, their occupants clearly searching. They're panicking, he said quietly. Langford will be issuing kill orders within the hour. We need to disappear completely. We moved fast, staying off main roads, using service alleys and underground passages. My long dark hair was tucked under a dark cap Jack had given me, and I kept my emerald green eyes down, blending into the crowd as best I could. The backpack with the master drive and the remaining encrypted copies felt like it weighed 100 pounds. We reached a new temporary location, a small, forgotten storage unit in a self-storage facility on the outskirts of the city, just as the sun began to set. Jack had prepared this one as a final fallback. Basic supplies, a secondary laptop, and multiple exit routes. As we secured the door, the news on the laptop continued to explode. Major networks were running wall-to-wall coverage. Stock markets were in freefall. Governments were issuing emergency statements. Victor Langford's name trended worldwide, accompanied by calls for his immediate arrest. But the Nexus fought back hard. Within an hour, counter-narratives appeared. Claims that the documents were fabricated, that I was a disgruntled employee seeking revenge, that the entire leak was a foreign disinformation campaign. Law enforcement agencies issued warrants, not only for me, but for anyone connected to the leaks. Jack monitored the situation on the secure feeds. "They're offering rewards for information leading to our capture," he said. "Dead or alive. Langford is burning every bridge to protect himself." I sat at the small table, staring at the screen. My hands were steady, but inside I felt the full weight of what we had unleashed. "We did the right thing," I said quietly. "The truth had to come out." Jack looked at me, his stormy blue eyes unreadable. "Yes, but the truth has a price, and we're still paying it." We spent the night preparing our final disappearance. I created multiple layers of false identities and backup data drops. Jack arranged for clean passports and transportation out of the country through his remaining underground contacts. We split the master drive copies. One stayed with me, one with him, and several hidden in secure locations around the city as insurance. At 4 a.m., as the city slept under the weight of the breaking scandal, we made our final decision. "We separate tonight," Jack said. "It's safer. They're looking for two people traveling together. I'll head north. You head south. We check in through the dead man protocol every 72 hours. If one of us misses a check-in, the other releases the remaining files." I met his eyes across the table. "Understood." Before we left the storage unit, Jack handed me a small black envelope. "New identity documents, cash, and a contact who can get you across the border safely," he said. "Use them wisely." I took the envelope. "Thank you for everything." He gave a single, sharp nod. "You did the hard part. The numbers never lied to you. You just forced the world to see them." We stepped out into the pre-dawn darkness separately. I watched Jack disappear into the shadows of the industrial park, his tall figure swallowed by the night. Then I turned in the opposite direction, the weight of the encrypted drive in my pocket, and the truth we had unleashed heavy on my shoulders. The city was waking up to a new reality. Victor Langford was already in custody by morning, arrested at his private estate as global pressure mounted. The Nexus network began to unravel in real time. Banks freezing accounts, governments launching investigations, markets continuing their chaotic plunge. But I knew the fight wasn't over. The Nexus had deep roots. Some strands would survive, some players would escape justice, and they would never stop looking for the woman who had pulled the first thread. I boarded the early morning bus heading south, my new identity documents in my bag, my emerald green eyes hidden behind dark glasses. My name was no longer Elena Voss in any official record, but the truth I had helped free would carry my real name forward for years to come. The numbers had finally stopped lying, and the world would never be the same again.